Good morning, everyone. Go ahead and get this started. My name is Casey Smoyer. I'm a program manager at Mantech, and I would like to welcome you all to the Data Management Best Practices session. Data as a strategic asset is a key pillar to DoD's overall strategic plan. And it's my pleasure to introduce today's moderator. The moderator for today is Ms. Caroline Kurersky. Ms. Kurersky is currently the acting director of the Office of the Chief Data Officer for DISA. Before serving this role, she served many different roles throughout DISA, including strategic planner for DISA's Operations Center, where she provided leadership guidance to ensure mission services to the military, defense agencies, intelligence communities, and many more. In her current role as acting director, she identifies, prioritizes, and executes data analytic initiative throughout DISA. I would like to now pass it over to Ms. Kurersky as she introduces the rest of the panel. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Casey. Hey, good morning, everyone. You said good morning, and it was like really quiet. Is it just 10 o'clock? You know, come on, guys, let's wake up. Data's a fun conversation. Let's go. Yes, thanks for the introduction. So our panelist today is Ms. Cynthia Hinton. She is the lead policy analyst in the DISA Data Management branch. And we have Mr. Dave McKinney. He is our branch chief in the Knowledge Management branch here at DISA. So today we would like to discuss data management best practices that can support DISA and the Department in Defense in achieving our common goals and objectives. Effective data management is critical in ensuring that we can harness the power of data to better drive decision-making, enhance operations, and improve overall organization process and support to our warfighter. We are living in an era where data is rapidly becoming a critical asset in the execution of our military operations, and it also is very important to our national security. Our ability to collect, analyze, and effectively use data is key to ensuring that we remain ahead of our adversaries and are appropriately positioned for anything that gets thrown our way. Data is a powerful tool that can be used to enhance situation awareness. It improves our decision-making, and it optimizes the deployment of resources to the field so that we are really putting what we need to have where it needs to be. The DoD generates and accumulates vast amounts of data across multiple domains to include public records, logistics, intelligence, and operations. The DISA strategic plan recognizes the importance of this vast amount of data and emphasizes the need for a comprehensive data management framework and practices to support the governance, analytics, sharing, and cataloging of our data landfill. The best data management practices within the DoD involve a combination of policies, procedures, and technologies to guarantee that data is properly managed, analyzed, shared, and collected, all to go with the DoD strategy of Vaultus. Our warfighters operate in a complex and dynamic environment where decisions must be made quickly, and they must be made with the best information that they have available to them. It has to be reliable and accurate so that they can make decisions that enhance the security of this nation. Giving our cyber analysts the training and lessons to understand the information presented to them allows them to make those informed, up-to-date, and accurate decisions. So by treating data as a strategic asset, we can improve our military readiness and our effectiveness. Within the DISA Chief Data Office, we have instituted numerous data management practice initiatives to meet the goal of leveraging data as that strategic asset. In the DISA Data Strategic Implementation Plan, we have outlined data improvement focused taskers that have achieved much success with working across the agency to implement those policies and procedures and that data catalog to meet those areas of focus. A few examples that we currently have are the DISA Data Catalog, a solution powered by IBM Watson Knowledge Center that is driving the data quality increase to support data integration into broader data fabrics. And that's really going to allow DISA cyber analysts to have that correct information at the speed of relevance. We have a logical metadata model and that's a metadata configuration guide for the DISA data catalog to implement metadata standards for agency use. Standards is going to be key whenever it comes to that data sharing and that data democratization that we are striving for across the Department of Defense. If we have boat, we have vessel, we have ship, it's going to be good data, but it's not going to be understood or standardized so that we can turn it into information needed for us to share across the echelons and enhance our security. Governance policies. Multiple policies for data management governance and instructions for the workforce to consider during product and program management efforts. Governance, policies, memos, structure. That is what is needed to make sure that we are propelling our data maturity where it needs to be when we need it as well. Once again, if we don't put rules in place and parameters for individuals to use that data in, we're going to go back to working in silos. We're going to go back to hoarding data, and that's not going to get us to that relevance of sharing that we need to be at. DISA Data Stewardship Program Guidebook. So this empowers stewardship roles to the workforce within DISA for them to perform data management responsibilities and outlines the expectation of those roles. The more data-focused individuals you have at every layer within your operation to focus, the more there will be data management practices used, much like security. We need data-focused just like we need security-focused all throughout the echelon, all throughout the different layers of how products are engineered, implemented, operationalized, and then sustained, right? So we used to only focus on the infrastructure. We used to only focus on security. Well, now we're taking all of that and really focusing that into the data layer so that no matter what network you're utilizing, no matter what transport or where you're trying to do, that piece of data is going to be secure so that and understood so it can go far across the DoD for all use. As we move forward, DISA is crafting conversations to learn how we can continue to invest in our data culture, data management systems, and data analytic capabilities. These investments will help us to develop a comprehensive understanding of the battlefield and how to anticipate our response to our emerging threats. These conversations are where we can collaborate with mission partners and learn how they're managing data, get their lessons learned and best practices, and also look at partnerships with industry to learn what solutions are available for us to explore that will really mature our data management practices and focus within DISA and the DoD. Okay, with that, we're going to have some questions for our panelists so that we can get their insights as well. We're not going to do PowerPoint, death by PowerPoint. So this is our only slide, guys. So you're welcome for that. Okay, Cindy, question number 1 is going to go to you. So what is data management within the federal government, and why do you feel it's so important?
All right. Okay, so I think the most common definition comes from the DAMA DEMBOK. And basically, DAMA kind of explains that data management is the development, execution, and planning of either plans and programs, policies, and practices that are going to deliver, control, execute, and protect the value of data assets throughout the life cycle. So just as that sounds, it's definitely a mouthful, and there's a lot to cover in there. So a key part of this is understanding that it takes not just a data skill set, but it takes a cyber skill set to address these needs. It takes infrastructure, it takes architecture. So these are a lot of key points that when we're thinking of data management and thinking about the kind of skill sets you would want to have for your organization, you want to be all-encompassing. Additionally, when we think about that throughout the federal government, you're going to really see it come front and center in 2018. So that's when the president's management agenda hits off with the cross-agency goal for treating data as a strategic asset, and then also with the federal data strategy. And then you get the big hitter with the Evidence Act of 2018. So that really laid out a lot of the regulations and requirements for federal agencies in regards to data management. So they set up the CDO offices and positions within each agency. They ensured that there was direct authority for those CDOs so that they can provide the official missions and execution of data management and have that consistency across the board. There's also a lot of responsibilities in terms of of the data management lifecycle and things of that nature. So in general, it's more or less important to see that data management brings the value in not just the activities, but the outcomes of those key things, like data quality, bringing those different types of data modeling, having that data lineage identified so that you always know where your source is coming from and you have the accurate data.
Yeah, no, absolutely. One thing we're doing right now is looking at the various networks that we have within DISA that we share with our mission partners and our customer base, and we're looking at how we did it 12 years ago. Is that how we should be doing it today with our networking? Well, maybe we need to change some of that, but before we do anything to our infrastructure, we really need to look at that data flow architecture so that we continue to have the sharing and that availability of that data, not just across DISA, but to our mission partners, so that they have what they need to make their decisions as well. And Dave, so knowledge management. So we already talked about data management. So what is knowledge management within the federal government, and why is it important?
Okay, so let me ask the audience a quick question by a show of hands. How many of you are knowledge managers in your title?
Well, not
In your title.
Get out of here, Strong.
That's cheating. You're actually all knowledge managers. If you are manipulating data, you're using data, you're creating data, you're storing information, you're sharing it, you are a knowledge manager. You're sharing it from day to day. The definitions of KM across the government are squishy. You can have the long, drawn-out academic answers. The short answer is the best one I ever heard was from the Army War College, is that it's just teaching people how to answer their own questions and finding the answer. Well, that was perfect. KM, unlike the data management where there's standardization taking place, KM is not standardized across DoD or even the government, anywhere in the government, federal government. It's really up to each organization to tailor their programs to determine what they need in that program for their mission and what they need to make decisions. At DISA, it's a growing program. It's been around for a while. It's sort of in segments around the agency. Other organizations like NASA have a federally mandated KM program by law. They have to have it, and it's a huge program. I recommend going out and looking at some of their stuff. A lot of it's available to the public. It's incredible what they've done out there. A lot of agencies in DoD and other organizations around the government, you might have one person in the whole agency who is the knowledge management person for that agency. So it varies. Again, it's mission driven. It's all about getting the information, the right information, I should say, to the right person at the right time to make the right decision. And it's all about the decision making and the information sharing. And it's cyclical. If you look on the chart down there, KM is actually throughout that. We put it in the analytics because that's where most of it occurs. But quite often, it generates more questions. After you've looked at the information, you looked at the data, and you start thinking, I need more data. And you go right back to the top and you start all over again, collecting data and cleansing it and organizing it.
Yeah, I mean, one thing we're really trying to capitalize, especially with knowledge management within DISA, we're starting to get our data cleanup. We're starting to get quality data for use, but then what do you do with it, right? Well, we're investing in different knowledge management, like data visualization tools. If somebody has to use more than one spreadsheet for a report or to make a decision, we got to get away from that. I mean, you can make dashboards, you can do workflows, you can use a numerous data visualization tools that we currently have within DISA, or that maybe we should be looking at. We don't know about it yet. As stated, we need to, we're really trying to break away from this silo of looking at only one piece of data here and getting those visualization tools, data here, data here. In the end, it comes back to knowledge management. How are we really aggregating that into information so that we can share it with things like JADC2, Advana, things of that nature? And we want to be able to do that clean, concise, and in an effective and efficient manner. All right, Cindy, data cataloging is a core best practice for data management. How does DISA's current data catalog capability help the DISA workforce today?
Absolutely. So this is a great question. I think that data catalogs really do bring a lot of the key activities that most of your data analysts or data stewards would be working in. So a data catalog tool would need to have a governance process in there, would have to have frameworks in there, workflows. You'd want to be able to pardon me, you want to be able to implement rules and policies, and then also identify where there are points of contacts, things of that nature. So you get this whole infrastructure of basically your active metadata. You're going to have the information in terms of where the data came from. You're going to also look at how it's changing over time. So these are all things that kind of feed into each other, of course, and they can occur at different cycles. But at one piece or one time, you're always going to have that information available. And with our data catalog, we really took it and understood, okay, here's what came out of the box. And Carolyn had mentioned this during her opening speech.
Let's go with that.
Lost the top of my... but yeah, so Caroline was speaking to the logical metadata model. And the logical metadata model, we really took into account what DISA's needs were as a workforce, where there was a need to have some kind of structure, where do we need to build the relationships within the different metadata, how are those going to feed into the different entities, and how is that going to make the biggest impact for DISA and DISA's users. So establishing that logical metadata model really made sure that we were going to have the most purposeful data catalog and really get the input that we need from our data analysts, our data stewards, our data officers. Because once they have the ability to utilize a tool, they'll be able to pull in all of their data dictionaries. They'll be able to connect automatically and observe that kind of data quality and say, you know, this is something that we need to look at again. Our data quality scores have gone down and it's not addressing the needs of our customers. So this really does open that door. People can then see they're all on the same page with the data visibility, the data terms, having that business glossary in there integrated within that. I think that brings a lot of value because I think you also was mentioning this in your opening. Someone can say one thing and another person can say another thing and it doesn't meet those needs. We need to be on the same page. We need to be talking about the same requirements because you're going to have something that's a fit for purpose, a fit for use. And if you can't get to that level, then there's room for improvement. And that's all what data management wants to do is we want to improve, we want to leverage that so that when it comes time to, we don't need to spend time cleaning up our data. We can move right into automation. We can move right into AI and ML tools because we don't have to worry about that. Our model was developed to meet those needs. So I think that's what really brings a lot of that value.
Absolutely. And the other thing that data catalog, a data catalog practice will do is you don't know what you don't know, right? You have no idea. And if you do in your organization, please tell me how you did that because I would like to know how you cracked that issue. But it's all about finding stale data that you have in storage infrastructures that shouldn't be there, right? We all know what our storage environments look like, and they should maybe be consolidated, maybe they should be expanded, but you can't have redundant data all throughout your organization and say that you're the premier support agency to anything, right? So that is one thing that we're really working with the data catalog to do is find what we don't know that we don't know. But also the data lineage, looking at what data is being used by whom, where is it coming from, who are the stewards of it, so that when we see like the IT is evolving or the need for that data is evolving, we can go back to that source and accurately tell them, hey, looks like we need this defined now. Sorry, so it's all about maturing, right? And that's what that data catalog and just data management practices as a whole is to do for an organization, is just really mature what your stance is with the tools and infrastructure that you have. All right, Dave, so what best practices would you say help to leverage data as an asset for data-driven decision-making?
So the first best practice you just alluded to, cleaning up your data, taking the trash out, as they say. If it's old data, I've looked through files all the time and I'll see 20 versions of a white paper somewhere. Which one's the most accurate? Is it the last one? Is it the first one? I don't know. I have to go find the person who wrote that to sort it out. We deal with structured and unstructured data all the time. The structured data, much easier to clean, much easier to manage. Unstructured, very difficult to manage. Unstructured can be emails, it can be notes from somewhere, it can be an article from something, or just something somebody said. You write it down and it becomes unstructured data. How do you clean that up and how do you manage it? Getting that authoritative source is a big part of it, and identifying those people, and just making the decision which data to look at and which data to throw out. Keeping it. Some of the tools that we use, search functions, search engines are great if you have an internal search engine where you can scan the data, look for it, even without a engine like they have, like Watson. You can still do this on your own. Dashboards, using dashboards, and we talked about that. We've been creating one recently for our acquisition folks, so they can look at every program at a glance and see the status of every single program just by mousing over it. The program managers maintain that data. They're the authoritative source, so they're the ones feeding that data. We don't let any trash in, and they're responsible for cleaning that up. But we make it visible to seniors and the managers and the leadership so that at a glance they can see what's going on in the agency. They don't have to go around rounding things up and calling people all over the place. So that makes it simple. A culture of information sharing is critical. You absolutely have to have that culture. Get rid of the silos, knock those down, knock down the walls, and share the information. An expression I like to use is the one that the Army uses, they stress it, is mission command. And that doesn't mean commanders in the field. That means having a command of the mission of your agency, of your organization, understanding it from the top down, and making sure that everybody in that organization understands it. So at any point, you can talk to anybody in that organization, and they can tell you what the mission is, what information they need to make that decision, how to get it. So often it happens that commanders have to make decisions with bad data or wrong data, or just not having all the data that they need.
Yeah, I was at a Gartner conference a few weeks ago, and I was speaking to an ex-IC CDO, and he actually implemented within his organization that anytime you get a report, anytime somebody's briefing you, whether it's numbers, whether it's a status of operation, programmatic or product information, you have 5 questions you need to ask that person and yourself regarding that reporting. So it's about awareness. It's, do I trust the data? Do I know where it's coming from? Is it valid? Is it up to date? If we continue to ask ourselves those things, then we can start trusting and changing that culture of how we utilize, data as an asset. And you're 100% spot on, Dave. Really, that's going to be the proponent that really helps us to leverage more AI, more ML, more optimization opportunities, is instilling, these standards, policies, and capabilities so that we can leverage the tools and, like I said, those futuristic capabilities needed for us to get to that speed of relevance.
Yeah. And I will just, one more thing add, you got the best practices and best tools to use. There is no single best tool. It's what you need. If you've got a good lessons learned program from your experiences, that's very, very useful. Not every agency does that. Exit interviews are good. You can collect a lot of information in them, but again, they normally occur when somebody's leaving the agency, leaving the organization, and they may remember what they did in the last 2 years. They don't remember the 18 years before that. So it's very difficult to capture all of that information with a lessons learned program unless you make it a really strong, robust program that goes from cradle to grave with them working in the agency.
I think we've all heard certain scenarios like this, but the one that I like to use, if I win $33 million tomorrow, I'm walking out. I'm not even joking, seriously, right? But we need to be able to have those knowledge management practices and data practices that when I walk out to my new boat and beach house somewhere else, the mission will continue. Because in the end, we're still supporting our warfighter. We still have a very vital mission to the success of the Department of Defense. Excuse me. And one person leaving and winning the lottery should not depict on how that program or how that agency is run. So, all right, Cindy, data governance is becoming more ingrained in our services lifecycle discussions. What are your thoughts on the current and future needs of data policy standards governance? And how does that practice provide value to our warfighter?
So this is my favorite topic, being a policy analyst. I am such a I love to be in the mess of it all. So what I first did when I came into DISA was got my feet wet, kind of understood the background of the organization, where we need to have different items looked at. But we talked, and I think there was a need to have a data policy roadmap. So looking at that, we really wanted to have an option to grow, to have that maturity growth in there with our policies and with our things, so that we implement and we create that roadmap for different people that are coming in or using the data, whatever the case may be. So the first part was understanding what the capabilities were that were needed. So is it going to be, we need to have stewardship in place before we can implement X, Y, and Z, or do we have to have a tool in place that can facilitate this and make it easier on our workforce and not have everything done manually? So in order to do those types of things, that's what really kind of laid out this policy roadmap. So we have roughly about 20 policies on there. Some of them may be a standard, they may be a memo, maybe a guidebook, but it's something that's going to feed to the workforce that's really going to allow them to say, okay, this is something that they have, this is a requirement that's coming down the pike, this is how we're going to address it. And once we look at that, the best part about policies, if you're not writing them well enough and they're not understood across the board, they're not going to be implemented. So we're working with our data council stewards, we're working with the executive steering committees, we're looking at the governance boards, because we want to make sure that we're making that impact. We're marking what are the risks of not having that policy in place and what are the KPIs, so that we can show this mattered. This gave us a path forward and it made us jump to the next section. So within DISA, the CDO office is actually only like a year and a half old.
Yeah.
We are a toddler, and I think as a toddler, we're doing fantastic. So when you look at it, I was just reviewing the policy roadmap before coming in today, and just in this short period of time, you have released an I-plan, you have released guidebooks, memos, all of these things that are letting people know we are listening, we got what you're saying out there, we need to have this structure. We're ready to come out. We're working on 5 different policies right now. That's going to address things like revamping our data sharing policy now that we have more information that we want to start implementing. We're going to have data governance guidebooks, so that can support the way that our data stewards are organizing, how they're setting up their own domains, what makes sense to them, and how should they use that and feed that up the tunnel. So within DISA, we have it was already done before I came on board, so I can't take credit. But it was a really smooth lines of communication. Those swim lanes were already put out there. You had the executive committee, you had the governance council, you had the stewardship on the other side, and it really allowed for this flow of communication. So you're not only getting it from the top down, but you're also getting it from the bottom up. And that's super important when it comes to any policy. You're always going to find holes in a policy, and if you want to do that, you got to have both ways of that communication. That's what's really going to bring the value and that impact. So the way it's going to bring value to that warfighter is we're going to start having standardized data. We're going to be able to start implementing things so that when they need something, it's going to be fit for use. It's not going to be, we have to wait a few weeks. No, it's going to be ready now. It's going to be done a certain way because this is how we have implemented it within that certain domain, that information needed, whatever the assessment may have been. But if we do that, that's the only way that we're going to really bring the value, make sure that people have the information that they have or that they need when they have asked for that question. We want to give it to them right then and there.
Authoritative data source, metadata requirements, standardization across the board, data normalization. This is all just to make the workforce lives easier so that they know where they need to go for what they need and have it at the tips of their fingertips, right? I don't know about you guys, but how often have we all said, hey, I need to know something about the sensor data on the DISA, and maybe not you guys, but some of the DISA folks out there have. And where do I go to get it? Well, I can go to this tool. Well, I can go to this tool. Or I can go to this application. Or I can go here. Well, what's the authoritative source? That's where you should be going. Right. So through governance, you are identifying that there's a need for authoritative data sources. There is a need for this rule. There's a need for this process. And following it is what's going to, like I said, mature the workforce and just make things a little easier for them so that they can really focus and reprioritize resources on key issues and key activities instead of building reports or trying to find a couple IPs on the network.
Caroline, can I just...
Yeah. Jump
Sorry,
on.
I had a note in here and I wanted to speak to it just real quickly. So I think one of the really cool things that the Data I plan has, so integrating the governance, we're going to have that institutionalized with different types of end-to-end agency processes. So we're looking right now, two pieces of that is the risk management workflows and then also the acquisitions. I think these are exciting things because for me, that's where I get to have a look at the business side as it relates to the risk side, then pull the data side in and then have that address different concerns, controls, things of that nature. But I would definitely highly suggest taking a look at the Data I plan just to have more understanding or more insight. I just wanted to
So the DISA, excuse me, it's a DISA data strategy implementation plan is what she's talking about, the DISA Data I plan. And what that is, it's our data strategy from 22 to 24 that lists tangible activities that we are currently doing within the office and within DISA as a whole so that we can meet those goals whenever it comes to our data strategy, the DoD strategy, and then the DISA strategic goals as well. So thank you for bringing that up. Really, really great points. So Dave, culture change is the toughest portion of our job. When it comes to any CDO, I promise you, across the board, they will say the hardest thing to do is change a culture of individuals that have been institutionalized to use Excel spreadsheets for everything, or to hoard their own data, or to just put everything on their own server and not share it across the board. It's how we've worked for decades. Need to know. This is mine. Ask me for the information. I'll get it to you when I get it to you. That's just human nature.
Yep.
But we're really trying to evolve from that, not just here within the DoD, but really across the board when it comes to information technology. Hence, all the AI, ML, RPA, all those different functions that we're trying to step our toes into that are being leveraged and really optimized out there by some other private and public institutions. So, Dave, how can the evolution of a data-centric mindset in DISA's culture advance the agency to meet various warfighter needs?
Number one is decision making. You drive the data to make a decision, and you make sure that the data is communicated throughout the agency. Everybody knows what they need to know. Everybody has access to it. They're not hoarding the data. You don't have to go pick up a phone and call somebody and beat them up to get the data. Make sure it's clean. Make sure you've got the authoritative source again, like that. And you have to communicate that culture and instill that culture continuously. It's not send out a point paper and say, yep, we have data culture now. It doesn't work that way. It has to be continuously, not beaten, but communicated out to the audience. Sometimes beaten into them. Because you've got some things like turnover. You've got new people coming into the agency who may have come from that siloed culture, and now you've got to teach them, well, here's how we do it at DISA, here's how we do it at our agency to build that culture. We have a tool out now that we do knowledge management assessments, and you can do this within an organization. And we look at 4 areas. We look at people, processes that they're using, their technology that they're using, and the culture. Culture is a big part of that. The people, we make sure that they understand how to get their information, that they know all the policies, and they understand all that in the organization. The processes that they have doesn't necessarily mean tech. It can be a written down process. I go to this person first, I go to this person, I do this. Is it a repeatable process? Does everybody understand how to do it? The technology, we've got tons of technology out there, all sorts of things. We're creating it all the time. Does everyone know how to use it, and are they using the right technology to get the answers and make the decisions that they need? And then again, back to that culture thing, do they have difficulty getting that information? Do they have, are people in their organizations or other organizations ready to help them and ready to help them make that decision? And are they willing to communicate and share information with the other organizations? The assessments can be done in a very small group, they can be done in a large group, and it's repeatable. You identify areas where maybe we're not using our tech as well as we should, and they can work on ways to improve that, and then go back and reassess. So again, a continuous process to improve. and it has to be supported from the top down. Everybody has to understand it, period, or it will fail.
I really think through the catalog, the asset, governance, data management practices, that's what's going to drive your culture, right? If you really set those key pillars up and make those things successful, your culture will fall in line. It's human nature. Give anybody a path to success or an easier way of doing something, they're going to do it that way. As long as they see the value and it's available for them to do so. At least that's what I keep telling myself. So I hope it works out. Okay, that's the end of our questions. We have about 10 minutes left, so we'll go ahead and open the floor for anybody who has a question. Go ahead and stand at the mic there. That's okay.
The statement that you made, you used the term speed of relevance. So I'm curious that from your perspective, from data governance and data engineering, what do you see as the major impediments to really creating that speed of relevance of data to the warfighter, especially in a contested environment?
Absolutely. So when I refer to speed of relevance, what I mean by that is when our director says that he needs a report or he needs to understand the health and environment, it shouldn't take us more than an hour to be able to get that report for him. However, what we're seeing now is that because the data is so siloed within different infrastructures within the agency or different tools, we're having to go to each of those PMs or each of those individuals and aggregate it together for that for that action report for the director so that he can have that speed of relevance. What we're looking at with these best practices is how do we consolidate that? How do we condense the processes? How do we understand what authoritative data sources are so that we know where to go for what he needs so that he can make decisions and talk to his counterparts so that our warfighters can do their job?
Caroline, I think.
Hi. Can you speak up a little bit?
Vicky Steele, Defense Intelligence. And my company specializes in what you were just speaking about, technology, people, processes, making sure those things are aligned to generate the culture that you desire. So how can my company help you? Where do I have to go to support what you're trying to create?
What do you guys do?
Well, hold on. So to engage more with DISA, we have our booth over there, the Chief Data Office. We do have a table over there. DISA.mil is a great place for a vendor or for product managers to come in and see where you would best fit within the agency and who to talk to.
Correct. I started all that process.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, yeah, we have a table over there in DISA, so stop by.
Correct.
Absolutely.
All of that is happening.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, Linda Jansen, DoD. You both talked about data quality, and I think you mentioned a data quality score. Just elaborate a little bit about how this is managing data quality and making that visible to users and try to score each.
Sure. So in particular to data quality, we're still integrating this and developing it, but we have something that we're preparing called a data readiness assessment. So this data readiness assessment is going to be a mandate, just like you would have for any system to go through the ATO process. You would have a scorecard that has those different functional areas. They have a weighted outcome. You would then have the program managers would either work through that information and click it out, or it's going to be a combination of maybe the Data Governance Council and the data officers, whatever the outcomes may be. We're still developing that part, but I think it provides a very crucial role exactly to what you were speaking to, is that are we developing data from the start that's going to meet that and have the standards and have that data model. I think another one is the availability through our catalog. So with the catalog, we have that, and that's visible to anybody. I think one of the things, Caroline, you were speaking to with first question, is that data accessibility and having that visible for everything. And that's what Caroline's been doing since the CDO office stood up, is making sure that everyone has access, everyone has this information. We're not hoarding. We want everyone to benefit. We want to succeed. So I think that's part of those two factors there, the scorecard approach, and that would also include some type of engineering approach on that as well, and then also the catalog.
Yeah, one thing we're really trying to look at is, the data maturity, right? We were talking about the scorecard. And we did a maturity assessment a couple years ago, right whenever the CDO office very first, came a thought into our deputy director's head, and it wasn't great. Our maturity score was not fantastic, but it was expected. We kind of knew that was how it was going to be. But leveraging our solutions that we have, the data catalog, we're able to say your core metadata requirements say that you have to have these 8 things defined. Now, whenever we start connecting to the sources and we only see that they have 2 things defined, that brings their data quality score down. And we're going to have a mandate saying every data source needs to be able to hit this mark or have a strategy to hit that mark when it comes to their data quality. And then also, like she was saying, the data readiness assessment. We're working with our operations review board, so whenever programs and solutions do go to get operationalized, that data conversation is in there so that we can say, how are you democratizing your data? Is it shared? Is it visible? So once again, going back to the question from USDA, whenever we're talking about relevance and speed, that we're able to know what authoritative source we need to go to for that data and how it can be shared. Thank you. Okay. Yeah, 4 minutes, guys. Anyone left? Yeah. I'll have to put a pin in that, sir. Thank you. Correct. Yeah, no, great question. Thank you so much. You can read an open source right now. Data security is a hot button. It's definitely a conversation out there. We have multiple policies and attributes within the data catalog, and with how we're also aggregating data in other sources to help with, ABAC, RBAC, making sure that data can be redacted based on the access, right? We really want to start looking at, that access quality, but also whenever it comes to PII, PHI, where we have it, mechanisms in place that are looking at what data is coming from what source and what does it say, and should it be together, and if not, then we put those mechanisms in play to keep them separate. But also whenever it comes to data security, it's not just looking at the security within the infrastructure, the various hops that data has to go through to make it secure, but really securing the data itself within its own contained, set. We don't want to always just rely on the network, security tools or the network security policies. We really want to start diving into data security policies and data, basically bubble wrapping the data so that we don't have to leverage the network security. So that's a lot of what we're doing now, and a lot of what we're hoping to discuss, with various individuals on what we should and can be doing. Hi.
Hi, Brad Chapman. Good to see you, and congratulations. It seems like you guys are very much farther along than the other agencies that I talked to. What are some areas that industry could potentially help us?
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't hear that last part.
What are some areas that industry could help us?
Oh, let me count the ways, friend. Data tagging. That's one right off the top of my head, right? We talk about throwing governance, we talk about throwing policies in there, but whenever it comes to really tagging the data, we can leverage our data stewards and data custodians to manually do it, but how can we do it in an automation fashion so that we can, tag the data while it's in transport and it hits where it needs to go. Another key area of focus that we're looking at are leveraging cloud analytics or advanced analytic tools that we can just put in a hybrid solution. Because we do have mission partners and war fighters that access different areas of different things, and we want to make sure that we give them the availability to have advanced analytics at their fingertips, whether they're a data scientist or not, right? So we're really wanting to make sure that we give the workforce the tools that they need to be able to advance their data knowledge and use it more effectively. I got a laundry list. I'm sure we can talk. Okay, last question.
Analyst do you see this impacting future contractual requirements when you put in RFPs and how companies will address their data management policies going forward with competition? And also, how does it compare to CMMI requirements that we've done in context of how we have CMMI require them to document processes, How does this data management discussion relate to CMMI?
Yeah, no, great questions as well. Thank you. So regarding how does it impact contracts, I see it complementing the contract and our vendor government relationships more than anything, really. We've always had language in there regarding security. We've always had language in there, for ethics and for network use. There should be language in there regarding data management and making it a key focus where appropriate, depending on what resource we're leveraging. We are working with our DITCO contract office to make sure that data management or data best practice language are that language is a foundation statement in all key contracts where it's needed. Obviously, we wouldn't do it in some, but we are doing it for most because we do want to hold not only ourselves but our partners accountable when it comes to what are we doing with our data. We don't want to just make it and forget it and store it somewhere and just keep incurring costs. We want to be able to, like I said, get that value out of that tangible asset. And in reference to CMI requirements, I don't see the data evolution that the DoD on today is going to change it. I think it'll enhance it, but the core foundation of CMI, we just want to bolt on a few more things to it so that we're really leveraging, like I said, getting the value out of that tangible asset. So, great question. Thank you. Okay, guys, I think that concludes this theater session. Thank you, everyone, for coming by, and look forward to talking to you.